Chairman DeSantis, thank you, Vice Chair Russell and Ranking Member Lynch for this opportunity to address the subcommittee today. To begin, I'd like to reiterate what the Chairman has already stated. This is perhaps one of the greatest untold stories of the last 11 months, meaning this administration's success against ISIS, along with the untold story, or the story which isn't getting enough attention with regards to the rebounding US economy. My message is a very simple one. The victory or victories against ISIS are a function of the first rule of war. One must not only have the capabilities to win, but one must have the will to win. What happened at 12:01 on January the 20th last year is that we have a new commander-in-chief who had the will to win and to devolve the decision-making, the military decision-making, to the right commands and the right commanders in the field, so that will could be translated into successes on the battlefield. We had been told by the last president that ISIS represents a generational threat to the United States. Well, it seems as if President Trump has crunched a generation down to just a few months. How do we know this? ISIS, less than 3 years ago, held territory in more than 3 countries of the Middle East, and had 18, according to the NCTC, the National Counterterrorism Center, had 18 fully functional affiliates in 18 different countries around the world. It was making, according to the Financial Times, $2 million every 24 hours in illicit oil sales, racketeering, hostage-taking, and even it's through its local taxation system. And most important of all, ISIS was the first jihadi organization in almost 100 years to successfully re-establish a theocratic caliphate. In the Trump administration, which I had the honor of serving, we made the destruction of the physical caliphate our #1 priority, and as the Vice Chairman has already noted, we have already succeeded thanks to our military forces in the field. None of the above attributes of ISIS is true today. It is not a caliphate. It does not hold significant amounts of territory, and it no longer has more than 6 million people living on the territory of that so-called caliphate. Why is this? Because of the de-ISIS strategy, the defeat ISIS strategy that was implemented by the President and by Secretary Mattis. What is the most simple summary of the de-ISIS strategy? Very simply, we went from a war of 1,000 cuts, the so-called attrition strategy that was nibbling at the edge of a global problem, to a strategy of annihilation under Secretary Mattis, and it has worked. A very clear metric of this, on one day recently, more than 1,000 ISIS jihadists surrendered. We have never, ever seen this before in modern jihadist history. Why? Because the jihadist believes if he dies in a war to defeat the infidel, then he will go straight to heaven. They don't usually surrender. Now they do. In addition to the strategies changing from attrition to annihilation, we have also seen a far more intangible change, which is the morale of our armed forces. The decision-making authorities have been divested to the commanders in the field. Under the last administration, even tactical targeting decisions were taken inside the NSC. The NSC should be the place for policy and strategy, not tactical or even operational decisions. That was changed under the new administration. As one Tier 1 operator told me when I was very fresh to the White House, we understand now the commander trusts us and has our back, and that has an unprecedented effect on the morale of our forces and their capacity to execute their mission. Lastly, there is the aspect of the morale amongst our partners and allies. With the President's Riyadh speech, he took them to task as a friend to say they must clear their houses, they must target and isolate the extremists in their places of worship and in their communities, and they have done so, especially with the GCC taking on Qatar as in its prime role as a funder of extremism throughout the world. In sum, we have gone from a generational threat being crushed in just a matter of months. But the war is not won. As we look forward, the Trump administration must focus on its counter-ideological policies. We must make the black flag of jihad as reviled as the Nazi swastika. That will take a full-throated counter-ideological push. I have recommended in my summary the Active Measures Working Group from the Cold War and the closer cooperation with our partners in the field, our Muslim allies, to delegitimize the ideology of all groups that share the jihadi creed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. Gentlemen's time's expired. Mr. Pregent, you're up for 5 minutes.